Hi team, this is a little video tutorial for the Diploma 2 Biomechanics and Analysis Posture Assessment. This is for the end of Task 1 and the beginning of Task 2 of your assessment on posture, where you're asked to analyse 3 pictures taken on a client from your class. So here's the assessment. I'm just going to take you down to the relevant parts that this little tutorial covers. So at the end of Task 1, where you're collecting data by taking pictures of the client and marking them up, you then need to upload the photos onto a Word document, ensuring clarity, brightness and colour are all conducive to analysis, i.e. can you see everything you need to see. That will then roll on to Task 2, where you've got to provide a general description of your partner's posture alongside the photographic evidence. Okay, so that's the purpose of this little tutorial. So I'm going to show you the process now. What you're going to need to conduct this part of the assessment is a blank Word document. My suggestion is that you have a Word document with 3 blank pages, so you should go down and ensure you've got 3 pages ready to go. You'll also need 3 pictures taken on camera probably earlier in the week of your client. So here's one of these pictures. This is a client from a student from a few years ago, and you can see taken in about the same position of where your pictures have been taken in as well. And you can see there's a pretty clear background behind this client, which is conducive to a good posture analysis, but a bit of clutter all around the place here that we want to trim off. So what we're going to do is right-click copy and paste onto our first page of our Word document here. Now it may come in onto the page in this size. More than likely it's going to be a bit larger than this picture when it transfers across. So what you're going to have to do is resize it. First thing you want to do is double click on the picture and go up to wrap text here, and if you just put either behind or in front of text, it doesn't matter. That then makes this picture movable. You might then have to slide it over until you can see the corner of the picture here, and then you want to resize it from the corner. Important you resize from the corner and not the edge. Obviously if you go from the edge, it's just going to get skinnier and skinnier, which is going to skew our findings a bit. So from the corner, you want to get it down to about the size of the picture that you see on the Word document here. At this point, we want to trim some of the surplus image here. So again, you can see up here we're on Picture Tools format. If you click off it, it disappears. If you double click on the picture or click on the picture, it comes back. You're going to go to crop. You'll notice that some black corners and edges have turned up on this picture here. Now if we go over one of those, we get that little T marker there. You'll see how it turns the cursor into a T, and you'll be able to drag from the edges. And you want to fill the picture effectively with as much of the body as you can. So we trim up from the bottom, making sure we can see everything we need to see. Click outside the darkened area there, and you'll see that it's cropped up. Now at this point, you can slide it over to one corner, grab it from the bottom corner and just start dragging it out until you get a full length picture here. Just be careful when you get to the bottom, you don't go over the margins of the page, otherwise when you print it won't print that part at the bottom. So just to the edges of the margin there is fine. So that's one picture done. Okay. In terms of sizing. Next thing is typically you want to enhance the view as much as possible to get the contrast right to see all the markings. So I often find that works best in black and white or grey and white if you like. So if you again click on the picture here, bring up the Picture Tool format, go to colour, and you'll see the first one up here is sort of a grey scale. Okay, so if we click on the grey scale, you can then lighten it or darken it by going into these areas here. So you can see it'll either make it easier or harder for you to see what you need to see. Okay, and if you're reminded, what are we trying to see here? We're trying to see the markings that we've made. So quite clearly you can see the chromium process markings. I've got some nibbles to line up there. I've got the ASIS to line up here, and I can see the knees nice and clearly there as well. Okay, so we've got it in grayscale. Okay, the next thing to do is to drop in a gravity line. So quite interesting to see what a gravity line would look like, and that's the line that bisects the body down the middle. I found the best way to do this, rather than just trying to draw a vertical line, which can get a bit messy, is to go to Insert and insert a shape, grab yourself a box. Okay, just start on the same dimensions as the photo that already exists here. So if I go in and grab my shape, grab the box, and just go from this corner here. Okay. Oops. Let's do it again. Box selected. Here we go. So I'm going to go out to about the midpoint here. Okay. So at the moment it's going to be a shaded box. I'm going to choose the middle of the chest as my center. So the middle of the chest that you can see between the nipple line and nipple line there, right through the center of that chest. I think that's pretty good. Just going to drop it there. Now, of course, it's a blue box, so we're going to go up to here to shape fill, and we're going to go no fill. And then I often find that white is the best color here, so shape outline, we can go white. And I can also, in this shape outline one here, go to the weight and just make it a bit thicker so it stands out a little bit there. So I might go to 3 point, for example. And what that'll do, it leaves me with a line down through the middle of the chest here, and we can see how that lines up against the head, against the lower body as well. Okay, so that's our midline there. I also at this point like to check that the photo is level enough. You know, if you haven't had your camera set up properly, everything's tilting off to one side, it's going to skew your findings a bit. So I'm going to grab another shape, grab another box, and this time just start at the bottom here, go up and along the skewing board effectively there. So if I do that, and then I go to my shape fill, no fill, and again I'm going to change my outline to white. You can see that it's pretty square across the bottom. There wasn't a lot of difference between the box that I put in there, and I can move that. Remember, I can just click on this box, drag it down, just compare the two there, and you can see it's pretty even across the back, which indicates that the photo is pretty level at this point. I can now use this line to go up and check some of the different markings. So if I go across the knee, you can see I've got the marking there across the right knee, his right knee, and you can see quite clearly that the left knee is sitting considerably higher at that point there. And what I'm going to do is just keep inserting boxes. Okay, from here up and across, and we'll go to the next point, which is the ASIS. And as long as you stick to the dimensions of, oops, shape, no fill. As long as you stick to the dimensions of the photo, you'll only ever get the horizontals coming across here quite clearly. Okay, so I'll do the same for the hips. I could, in fact, let's see what happens here. If we go copy, and then we go right click paste, it's just pasted another box in there for me. So again, I can reline that, take that line up to where I want it. So I might go nipple line this time. Okay, making sure it's outside the dimensions of the box, the photo, sorry. Yep, and then do my format stuff again, shape fill none, so we'll go to white, shape outline, white. Cool, so there's the nipples done. One more, and that will be the shoulders there. So alright, so this will be the same process for all three of your pictures. I'll show you some other differences when we get to the other ones there. So again, putting in the box there, lining up just one shoulder, so I'm going with the lowest in this point here. Shape fill, no fill, and the white shape outline white. Okay, so the only other one I'd consider maybe doing is looking at the ear height. You could do one across the ear height. You could also do one across the thumbs if you wished here as well, to see how the thumbs line up. So again, I get an indication if I go up to the bottom of that thumb there. You can see that this thumb on this side is lower than this thumb on this side, okay, and that sort of is in line with the shoulder heights there as well. Okay, so those are the horizontal things that we can put in place. Just going to put that one back on the knees. Other things we might look at, the foot positioning. You can see that this foot is clearly everted. It's toeing out compared to this one here, okay, and we can also see that the midline passes far closer to his left leg than his right leg, which could indicate that he's loading to one side. We see that while the gravity line is through the middle of the chest, it's missing the belly button here, it's towards his left side, and the head is fairly even, although it looks like a little bit more head on the left side as well. So it looks like everything's tilting off a little bit to the left there. Okay, left knee, however, is a little higher, okay, and you would have to say that the left hip is a little higher as well. So it looks like we're a little higher and higher, and then a little lower and a little lower up the top. So is he correcting towards one side? What's going on there at the moment, we're not quite sure. We'll explore that later. Alright, next thing we're going to do is insert a text box. So insert text box, just choose draw the text box in, and we're going to draw a text box that goes alongside the picture here. Okay, and what we're going to do at each part along the photo here, we're going to indicate what we find as a postural anomaly or good thing along the way. So provide a general description of your partner's posture alongside the photographic evidence. Point out any obvious abnormalities or asymmetries. Okay, so we're talking about things that do level up and things that don't level up or don't look normal. Okay, so we might start this by at the head here, and you're welcome if you wish to insert things like some arrows and point the arrow in towards the head here, and then just start writing the box. So I could go take this up to here, where I'm going to start my writing, and go the client's, you can use their name, your client, head appears to tilt slightly to his left. So that's the first thing I've noticed. It appears that the ear on the left hand side is down. See that the okay, so there's the first thing I've noticed there. Leave yourself a couple of lines, go down to the next point where we talk about the shoulders. I would say here the shoulders are relatively level, being a fraction lower on the left side. Now, if we go into the posture assignment, and we go down to the rubric here, you'll see for this part here, a thorough examination of the client's posture is completed next to the picture. That means you've talked about each part, okay, along the way, good or bad. Correct terminology was used, and all issues were identified. Okay, so correct terminology. Now, if I go back to look at what I've just written here, the shoulders are relatively level. What am I actually talking about there? I'm talking about the acromion processes are relatively level. That's the marking that we made there, right? And I continue looking down. I'd have to say that the left nipple sits lower than the right. Okay. I would talk about the gravity line. This is the belly button to the left. So everything at this point is heading over to the left. I could also look at the distance between the arms of the hang. So if you were tilting off to one side, for example, you'd expect the arm on that side to hang further from the body. And it looks like there's a little bit more daylight between this left arm and the side than there is by the right arm. And if we look at the lines of the torso right here, you can see that the lines are angling towards that left side. Okay, so we've got something going on there. We don't know exactly what's happening at the moment, but that's something we can talk about. So as we continue on down the process there, guys, you're going to see more and more things crop up, and we talk about good or bad. How do those levels work out? We talk about the foot positioning, the width from the line, and the more that you give me in terms of detail here, the more likely it is that you're going to get a 4. Alright, so that'll be the anterior. You can move on to the next page, obviously, and we're just going to grab another photo and show you a couple of things around the lateral photo next. So I'm going to go in and grab my lateral photo, copy that bad boy, chuck it in the same manner in here. So you just watch the process here again just to get the hang of it. So here's our photo that's come in. I'm making sure that I've got it behind text so I can move it around. I'm then going to crop it. In the picture format, crop. This one will be a bit skinnier because it's obviously a side-on view. Yep, move it up into that corner and then drag it from the corner. So we are, you see I've gone a bit far there. The danger in going a bit quick. So move it down, move it down, move it down. There we go. Okay, again going into grayscale just to keep it consistent. Click on here, color it up grayscale. And I don't think I need to change the lighting there. I think I have everything I need to be able to see there in terms of the side profile. One of the important markings here, and one of the only important markings we need to see, is that malleolus, the lateral malleolus marking down here, because that's where our gravity line is going to be inserted. And this picture here gives you more information than any of the other views. So if I insert a shape over top, same as I did before, this time I'm going to line that up with the malleolus of the ankle. So you can see that my shape is going to bisect the ankle there. Same deal where we get no fill in the shape, and we can change our shape outline to white, maybe thicken that up with the weight a little. Oops, change the weight. And we have a gravity line. So that gravity line, if you think back to our notes, should bisect the lateral malleolus, should go through the head of the femur, should go through the middle of the shoulder here, and then go through the ear. So what we can see happening quite early on is we've got a perpendicular and quite vertical lower limb, and then we're starting to angle forward from this point on. So you don't need to draw these things in, but you're welcome to. If you wanted to highlight something there, we could say from this point on, where it should have been passing slightly anterior to the knee, we've got this kind of scenario going on there. And again, making sure that you can see the colorings there. So we've got that kind of thing going on, and then we're correcting for it somewhat in the upper body by sort of angling back. Okay, and then we are correcting again at the neck with a protracted neck coming forward through the airline there. So we're left with a bit of a zigzag shape here, which is quite common in our posture. You'd also see that quite a pronounced scoop in the back here, accentuated by some decent glutes. But what we're really looking at here is the angle in which the torso is going from the hips. And you'd have to say, looking at these two markings here, that this is the predominant angle of the torso as it exits the hips. So I'm just going to go to wide again so we can see that in here. So you would have to say that this guy has anterior pelvic tilt. You can see from the line of his shorts going forward, you would expect a slight anterior pelvic tilt, and I'd suggest that that's more than a slight anterior pelvic tilt. So we've got a lean forward occurring there. You would see that the quads are quite engaged here, so the knees are somewhat locked out. Okay, so we almost need to soften those knees, straighten up at the hips there, and then we can realign things along this this gravity line, which he's well forward of at the moment. Now, if he's well forward of that gravity line, you could almost suggest that his weight is heading towards his feet, or his toes, his forefoot or toes, and of course the quads are very engaged, but his posterior chain is not. So just a reminder, working in a text box here. Okay, next to the picture, and then writing about what you see at every juncture along the way here. So the head is forward of the gravity line, the neck, and using that terminology, protracts. Okay, so protraction going forward like that. You would talk about the shoulders, whether you think the upper shoulders here might be quite rounded, and I'd suggest in this case the shoulders are a little forward and rounded in this case. Okay, the gravity line's also passing towards the posterior part of the arm. It's missing the spine effectively altogether and should be running right through the spine. And we would talk about all these elements here, like the hips appear to be anteriorly tilted, the torso appears to tilt forward at its lower end and then correct for that at the top, which is probably putting quite a bit of stress on his lower back there as he corrects for that. Okay, so all the way along the body, we're going to be making comments about what we're seeing along the way, again, good or bad things there. So always thinking about things and connecting the two photos together as well. So one thing we notice here with the shoulders slightly rounded forward, and one of the telltale signs of rounded shoulders is how the hands present on the front view. And if you look here, you can see virtually all of the back of the hand almost here. So that's usually a case when the shoulders are slightly rounded forward there. Usually you want to see those hands a bit more side on in this case here. And some people you see the complete back of the hands, which indicates their shoulders are rolling forward quite badly. Okay. So what's happening here is a classic case of a person who's correcting for posture. So they're trying to stand with good posture, but the lower mechanics down here are letting them down in terms of this forward tilt, and they're simply correcting by trying to pull their shoulders and torso back, which will put stress on their lower back if they stand like that. Okay, so comments all the way down the picture there. We'll do the last one real quick. just to show you and talk about a couple of points about each here. So if I close that one off, go grab our posterior view. Okay, go back into our doc and just paste it in. We follow the same process again. So again, first thing, wrap text behind text. Okay, we want to crop. Now, of course, if through this process you upload a photo, you put it on the server and you realize at that point, you put it onto your Word doc and you realize at that point when you've got it there you can't see some of the alignments, then I'm afraid the only thing you can do is go and retake the photos, which is not ideal, but yeah, we should have made sure that our photos could show all of the markings that we wanted to see. Last thing, I'm pretty happy with what I can see. I can see the markings in the back of the knees, I can see the PSIS, the posterior iliac spine, I can see the scaps there as well. Also got a decent bit. I might actually adjust the contrast a little to see this, the shape against the background here. So we might just tap in and just have a look at how we can make that a little clearer potentially. So maybe about there. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to see the edge of the shoulders there. Alright, so same deal as before, we're inserting our shape. First the gravity line, so this time you've got a line through the middle of the back. You want to see that that line is relatively straight as well. So we're going through the middle of the back, following that crease line. Let's say that has it about there. Oops, no fill. White. And we'll thicken that up a wee bit as well. Alright, so what do we see? I mean, you can adjust if you think you're not square there. So I'd say that's going right through the cleft of the butt and through the middle of the back line there. And what you can see is that the PSIS is shifted over to one side slightly here. So it's closer, the line is closer to the left than the right, his left. And of course the scapula looks to be a little bit lower and a little bit further away from midline as well, which could indicate an issue around the shoulder there too. Fairly equidistant through the legs in this case here, so maybe a fraction closer to this right leg here, but nothing to write home about there. Okay, and again, checking against the bottom, it looks like a pretty square picture. Alright, so same deal as what you did on the last one. You're going to have to put in some boxes here. Okay, so check against that. And, oops, the wrong one, so no fill. And shape outline white. Cool. So leaving a line in each place, you can see the backs of the knees pretty similar. So it would indicate that because there was an issue on the other side looking forward, it's probably around the kneecap itself. So we might be talking the quads and or the shortness of the quads, for example, one side pulling up the patella. So given that the patella is a sort of free floating bone over the top of the knee joint, that could have differences on the front to the back. If we were to quickly compare PSIS, relatively level, but of course one further away from the midline, and then we're actually relatively level with a slightly lower scapular marking on that side there. So things to talk about on the back view here, guys, once you insert your text box. I'd be talking about the head. You can see that there's more head on the right hand side of this one here. Now, you know, people, once they settle into their stance, depending on what they're focusing on, so before, you've got to understand that the client facing forward had a point of reference. He was looking at the camera. He was able to make distinctions on how level he was or adjust his levels depending on what he was looking at. Okay, whereas this one, he's facing the wall. He has no reference as to what's level and what's not, and therefore it's not unusual to see differences between the front and back portions there. Remember as well, shoulders can be different heights to the scapulars on the back. The scapulars have sets of muscles which act directly on them, so one could be lower than the other. Okay, and also, you know, the pelvis could be slightly turned one way or the other. So things I generally look out for here. You can see here where the lats sort of taper down into the narrowest part of the waist. You know, looking at the point across where that happens, that can give you an indication of a longer, shorter side. But don't be put off by things like shorts and undies being not level across the back. Okay, that's why we've got our markings there. All right. Now, what if there's not a lot to talk about? Then you just talk about what's level. You just say the scapula were relatively level and equidistant from the line. You say the knees were relatively level at the back. That's fine. There's nothing to talk about. Then you don't need to make something up there. Now, once you've finished a thorough sort of chat about those things there, guys, you'll see that there's a second part to this part here. Okay. So once you've pointed out the obvious abnormalities and symmetries, thorough examination using good terminology, the last step of this bit is to conduct the New York Posture Rating Test that you had a practice on the other day. But this time you're going to do it on your client's still images. You're going to work out where they sit in terms of percentile ranking for this test and then include that in your actual assignment. So when you introduce your client in the assignment, you'll start with who they are, what they do, their sport, then their injury list will be in there, and then you'll put in their New York Posture Rating Test. So to get that mark, a lot of people do forget this one, guys, so to look at the rubric, you're just trying to eke every mark you can out of this. Okay, at this point here, so the New York Posture Rating Test was carried out to a high degree of accuracy, so you've marked them accurately enough, and the percentile ranking was identified. You start to lose marks, if you don't identify the percentile ranking off the front page of that document there. Okay, so guys, that's it. Not too tricky. Once you get the process down, you're copying those pictures over. You'll end up with 3 sheets like this. Okay, some people prefer to print them off and just write notes on them, okay, as they go. But you will need to get the lines out. You'll need to put the gravity line down each one, and you will need to indicate along the way. So I want these things written at the point at which you notice. Okay, so put them near where you're talking about, or maybe even an arrow that indicates what you're talking about there. Okay, wherever possible, try to use the terminology for the bony markings and those kind of things. But otherwise, just talk about each part systematically as you go down. Really think about the things that are level or not level there that you're noticing, and that'll ensure you get a thorough examination of the client, and therefore a 4. New York Posture Rating Test. Remember, you want the total. You're going to have to rip out that page from your booklets, New York Posture Rating Test, filled out, and you'll attach that to your assignment in the appendices of that assignment as well. All right, guys. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, good luck with the assignment. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.